Time for the Morning Blitz with Ross Volkmer.
That broadcast school has really paid off.
And Christian Peck-Dimit.
Do you want to keep this job? Shut up, listen, learn.
The region's only local sports talk show, discussing it all from the preps to the pros.
What time is it? Game time!
Simulcasting on AM 730 Fox Sports Tri-State, streaming online at nwksradio.net and the Rockingham app.
They are everywhere.
The Blitz is presented by the Insurance Agency, the Farmer State Bank in Oakley, the Cowboy Corner Express, and Equity Bank of Hoxie, Quinter, and Grinnell.
Stop what you're doing and listen.
Out over the plate, and Garcia dives, throws in time. Woo! That was a smoking hot play.
Drove to deep right field. Way out of here. A second deck job for Josh Naylor. And another 3-run blast, his second in as many innings. There's 1-2. High fly ball. This is trouble. Bellinger back some more at the wall. Jumps and he makes the grab. Oh, Bellinger.
1-0 pitch. And hits that to left field. It might have a chance. Fly back to the wall, and it is gone. Towering shot by Chris Bryant. His second home run this year, and it ties the game.
Downs, free, another one! He couldn't buy one in game 3, and now he can't miss. Gobert will set a screen. Let go. Edwards, another screen. A 2. Scores! Big time! Doncic with the desperation.
Hey, happy Wednesday morning, everybody. We're back on the Morning Blitz. Ross Volkmer, Christian Peck-Dimit with you here on 102.5 U-Rock, AM 730 Fox Sports Tri-State. Of course, also online, nwksradio.net, the Rockingham app. And, of course, video streaming still available. It still works, believe it or not. We have, it still is going. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. You can find us many, many ways to check us out here on the Morning Blitz. It's been a little bit of a rough morning for Christian Peck-Dimit. Over there are some technical difficulties, but I believe we have got those ironed out at this time. So always got to check your settings. Always got to check your settings.
It's true. Someone used my computer in between shows here because there were some other things open that usually are not, and Christian did not use. But yeah, I got them all adjusted. And speaking of the live stream, I worked with wonderful Christina yesterday, and we should hopefully, obviously, let us know on the text line 785-899-2222 if this is not the case. But if you want to go back and not just listen like you can on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all these things, to old episodes, you can also go back and watch old shows on YouTube. They'll be all in a playlist.
Is not enough for 1 hour a day. Go make it more.
I would not recommend this if you want to keep, the eyes intact. But on the website, they should be linked so that you can watch old shows on the website. You can watch them on the YouTube, on the Facebook, on the Twitter, all the good stuff. But yeah, good morning so far, Ross. Actually, I heard a rumor that I need dispelled or approved here from about Ross, that apparently, that there's a big garage sale thing going on this Saturday, all up and down the highway.
Highway 24 garage sales,
Highway
yes.
24 garage sales, and B, that the Volkmer household will be taking part.
We are participating. Yes, we will be having a garage sale at the Volkmer household. So, So I'm not going to sit here and say, come on by. I mean, if you want to stop by, great. But yes, we are having a garage sale coming up here on Saturday, starting at, I think, 9 o'clock Mountain Time. We got some. It's so funny because my wife, she's filling out the information for it, like saying, hey, what's all going to be in this sale?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, well, we're going to have this and we're going to have this. Other than that, I don't really know. I think it might just be a smorgasbord.
I think that's all garage sales.
I know, but sometimes on the Highway 24 deal where they say, tell us what's going to be in your garage. You're like, maybe it's kids' clothes, maybe it's China or something like that. And so anyway, we're just like, well, we'll have some kids' clothes. We'll have a few kids' toys. We might have a little bit of this stuff, but there's going to be a smorgasbord and some hidden treasures, I'm sure, for some people out there. You just never know who walks into your garage and says, "Ooh, I need that. Here is all my $1 bills."
Joel Navarro here of KXXX fame, and I may just be raiding the Volkmer household.
All right, sounds good. I heard that there might. It's so funny. Side story here. So Quinn, who puts together all of our visual designs and does all that stuff for us, he has a storage unit here in town, quote unquote storage unit. And anyway, so yesterday he needed to move some of the stuff out of his storage unit because he's going to a different storage unit. So Joel and I were helping out. And the funniest thing the whole time is that Quinn keeps talking about how he is a minimalist. And yet when you go through his stuff, there is not much that screams minimalist. Now, he lives minimalistic with his house and things like that. But the stuff that he has he has accumulated over the years does not scream minimalist. And then Joel Navarro says, well, I'm a minimalist too. And yet Joel's the one here taking stuff that Quinn says, I don't need that, and taking it back to his place.
Here's the thing, and I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but if you've ever met Joel, around him, he won't scream minimalist because, he picks up everything. He goes to garage sales, a discount aisle, grabs a bunch of stuff he doesn't need, and then he pawns it off on me. I'll come back to... This is a lovely studio.
I heard you're getting a coffee table. That's what I heard.
Yeah. I have this great studio that I do the Blitz in, but I have another office that I do the rest of the days work in. And I will go back to that office after the show, and there will more times than not be something sitting in there from Mr. Navarro that he does not need anymore, that no human being should ever need. Like a stock picture there is currently a stock picture sitting on my desk of women in one-piece bathing suits from like the 60s.
Oh, nice.
No one here knows. Classy. Like, why do I need that? I don't know. But he doesn't look at things and scream, Christian needs this. He just says, I don't want it anymore, so we're putting it in Christian's office. So there's a lot of stuff.
My wife chimes in on the text line saying, Christian, please come to our garage sale, but you're not allowed to leave empty-handed. So you've already been hooked.
That's dangerous.
So you'll have to leave with something, apparently.
No promises.
Oh, no. You come, you leave with something in your hands. All right. We got a full show ahead today. Joe Tillery, a new guest, is going to be joining us. We're going to be talking lots of K-State, with in particular K-State baseball, as they get set for regional play starting up here Friday down in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So Joe Tillery, who does a lot of work on YouTube covering Kansas State, he will be joining us coming up on the show. Some interesting news yesterday, late last night, the announcement that the Negro League stats have been added into Major League Baseball stats. Some interesting thoughts and some interesting opinions, I think, from both Christian and myself here a little bit later on in the show. We will get to the Rockies and the Royals briefly. We'll touch a little bit on the Western Conference Finals. But I want to quickly highlight the all GWAC baseball and softball teams that were released this past weekend. The way it works, for those who forget, once everybody in the GWAC league, it doesn't matter what sport, once their season is done, so the last team standing, so in this case, it was Holcomb softball, the last team standing, once that's what, then softball can be released. And so that's why you have to kind of wait until even after the postseason, which I don't know why that rule is personally. I think they shouldn't. They know it before going into regionals, so why not just release it right after that? But anyway, they have released those, and we have that information here on the Morning Blitz. So do you want to start with baseball or softball first? Where would you like to start?
I would love to start with baseball, because the first team, all GWAC, was just all Holcomb. Half of it was Holcomb, and I don't think that's super surprising, but that sort of stuck out to me.
Yeah, 4 guys were from Holcomb in the first team, so you had Holcomb's Cooper Tishner, David Hernandez, Keegan Johnson, and Corbin Johnson were that. And for those who don't remember, how it all works, once again, is the coaches from all the league schools get together in a meeting room, and they vote for certain players. Like, I think you get a vote for I don't know how many it is, 10 players or something like that. And then the highest vote getter, is actually the player of the year. So in this case, it was Scott City's Brady Welker, which I believe he was deserving of that. Brady Welker was amazing, not only pitching, but hitting. He was a complete two-way player. He was fantastic this year. Brady Welker, no doubt deserving of that. And he's going to go play over, I believe, in Northeast Oklahoma State at Division II college next season. But he was no doubt probably the player of the year. Then you had Armani Isak of Ulysses. He was the second player voted, followed by Corbin Johnson. Cole Linton of Goodland made the first team. He was the fourth player voted the most, getting the most votes. And Max Kirschenbrock of Colby, I believe, was in the fifth spot So Colby's Max Kirschenbrock and Goodland's Cole Linton were the only two kind of regional athletes that made the All-GWAC first baseball team. Other selections in the first team included Cimarron's Chase Copper, as well as Ulysses's Carson Walker, along with those four Holcomb players. So there you go. That was the results that came out of the first team all league. You're right. There was a ton of Holcomb in this deal. And here's the thing that stands out to me a little bit is that if you're basing it off of rankings, it was pretty fascinating to see Cole Linton be the fourth selection and not like the two or higher. You know what I'm saying there? That
I get exactly what you mean.
I am not trying to say that I think Cole Linton should have won Player of the Year. I am not saying that. But I'm just saying it's fascinating, I think, because he probably is the best pitcher in the league, probably top to bottom, and he was considered the fourth best player in the league. And that's fine. Once again, I'm not complaining about the voting or anything like that. It's fascinating to me that the caliber of player that Cole Linton is, especially on the bump, being in the fourth spot is just fascinating to me. And it goes back to this whole point in this discussion that I love to talk about is if you're a great player on a subpar team, how much love are you really going to get? That's the thing. How much does a team record impact individual showings?
And it's always a question mark, and it seems to vary league to league and sometimes sport to sport, which is unfortunate, if nothing else. We could spend a whole, in you know what, I think we probably should spend a whole segment in some summer day talking about the way that they determine these teams, because it feels like with all the coaches voting and them sort of making a argument for their players, that there is a better way to do that. But a discussion, like I said, for a different time. And yeah, I think it would have to be a question for Colt. Not that fourth in the GWAC is low by any means.
No, it's not bad at all.
But for him to be that low, for Holcomb to squeeze in all those players, it seems like team record or team performance this season would have to have some sort of a bigger weight
impact
than we're
in
thinking. Well, a bigger impact than we're thinking. To me, all blank teams, so all NBA, all pro in football, all GWAC here in Western Kansas, should have A, only the regular season, and B, only to do with that player's performance and not with team record. But that is, I think, another problem with the way that they determine these teams. It is largely behind closed doors, so you don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's. I've heard stories, and I actually had a text from a coach just chime in and say, "Have me on the show sometime. We can talk about it."
There you go.
So
there you go.
We'll do that sometime this summer.
I've talked to coaches as well. They're not convinced it's the best way either.
I don't know what is the best way. I mean, you can't do. I mean, they do this all over. There's coaches polls. There's media polls. You can't. You're not going to do a media poll. You're not going to probably do that.
Doesn't make sense.
But this is probably, with what you have, probably the best way of going about doing it. Now, the interesting thing is, I don't know. I think it used to be, and maybe it's still this way, where they would throw out a player name and they would discuss. But that would also be where a coach could sit there and grandstand on that certain player and be like, "Oh yeah, I don't care. Just get this guy in. He needs to be a first teamer. I don't care if anybody else gets on the first team. This kid needs to be there. That kind of thing. So once again, this way where they here's a ballot of all the players. Make your votes, and they vote, and then the most votes gets player of the year. That makes sense. And then second most votes and then the top 10 vote getters get to be on the first team. I don't see an issue with that if there's no grandstanding, because the coaches are voting based upon that. So Tess Smith, Goodland Cowgirl softball coach, continuing to chime into the show. No longer positions, just first team, second team, and honorable mention too. That's another thing. It used to be like first team outfield, first team infield. Now it's just first team, which whatever, because of the size of the schools that are in this region, and because of the versatility that you have to have moving players around, I see why it's first team, all that stuff, which, like I said, I don't have any complaints with the first team whatsoever. And the second team, by the way, Ulysses is Alexis Navarrete. Also, Kaysen Cedarstrom of Goodland made the second team. Avery Radke of Scott City. Logan Heddleston of Cimarron. Jaredon Schultz of Holcomb. Braden Foss of Colby made the second team as well. Weston Johnson of Hugoton and Rylan Acton of Cimarron all made the second team. This was, honestly, if we're being completely honest, it was kind of a down year in baseball. It kind of was, because I don't think Scott City had the season they were hoping for. Goodland definitely didn't have the season they were hoping for. Hugoton had single-digit wins. Cimarron had a better year than I think maybe some people thought. Holcomb had the best year, and people thought they'd have a good year, and they had the best year, yet they were knocked out in the semifinals of the regionals. So it was kind of a down year for baseball in our region. Sort of. But like I said, I'm not going to sit here and balk about, one spot up or one spot down. I'm just saying it was just a little bit surprising. But once again, it goes back to, I think, Cole Hinton didn't have as good a year as he had in previous years. I'm sure the win-loss record or the lack of run support had something to do with that a little bit. But it was fascinating to see the first and second teams come out here. Once again, your first team all-league selections were Brady Welker of Scott City, who was the player of the year, Ulysses' Armani Isak and Carson Walker, Goodland's Cole Linton, and Colby's Max Kirstenbrock. And then Holcomb had 4 guys selected: Corbin Johnson, brother Keegan Johnson, with Davin Hernandez and Cooper Tishner. Those were all first-team selections for the all-GWAC baseball team. As for the softball side of things, because we got to keep moving on this show, first-team selection, Corinne Johnson should have been, no doubt about it. She was no doubt, she carried that team all the way to the state semifinals. Cheyenne Kramer carried Scott City to a number 1 seed in the 4A tournament. So those were the top 2 players and the top 2 pitchers in the league. Ellie Jo Tankeo definitely should have been a first-team player. She was phenomenal, especially with the bat in her hand. She was an amazing hitter. Ryan Rodriguez is one of the top all-time home run hitters over her career in the GWAC from Holcomb in the first team. So was teammate Emma Cornelson. Mallory Cup of Scott City. Quinn Campbell of Cimarron, the sophomore pitcher, was very good. Jalissa Sabatka, the lone Colby selection in the first team. Brooke Bailey was a first-teamer from Cimarron, and so was Goodland's Allie Cure. Those were your first-team selections for softball. I really don't have any complaint about that whatsoever. I think, no doubt, the top 2 vote getters probably should have been Kramer and Johnson, and they were. And Tankeo should have been up there as well. Those 3 were, no doubt, the top 3 players in the league this season. Second team selection included Hayden Bellamy, who just missed the first team. From Colby, she was a second teamer. Morgan Buckholtz of Holcomb, Brooklyn Dye of Cimarron, Brooklyn Deniston of Holcomb, Grace Reedazel of Goodland made the second team, deservedly so. Carissa Irvin of Scott City, Ava Skinner of Hugoton, Brooklyn Clark of Hugoton, Haley Blocklinger of Goodland was a second teamer. Addie Harbor of Ulysses was also a second teamer. And then honorable mention, a whole long list of that. You had Bailey Beeler of Cimarron, Ashlyn Rose, and Jordan Coe of Scott City. Riley Carter of Colby, the freshman, get an honorable mention as a pitcher. Lexi Hickey of Hugoton, Ashlyn Wilson of Holcomb, Jeanette Gonzalez of Hugoton, Alexis Sanchez of Ulysses, Megan Feltman of Cimarron, Hannah Kumarol of Goodland, and Emmy Ruiz of Holcomb were honorable mention players there for all-league softball. A couple things that stood out to me. Number 1, Cimarron had a ton of players on all 3 teams, and they deserved it absolutely. They were a fantastic team this year. Cimarron was a great team. They had a lot of really high-quality players, They're going to graduate a good chunk of those players for next year, but they're going to bring some good pieces, young pieces back too. That's a really good Cimarron squad for kind of being one of the smaller schools in 3A softball. They were really, really good this year. And in Holcomb and Scott City, they were as good as they were because their pitchers were as good as they were. Their pitchers were dominant.
And the pitchers got love in the
and they
softball all-team selections. And I hate to harp on this more than we should, but speaks a little bit to that inconsistency where getting love in the softball and less in the baseball. But also, why do they do an honorable mention team and not baseball?
I don't know. Maybe that had to do with votes, be my guess. And that also could speak to the fact, I don't know this for a fact, this is just me spitballing, that could also speak to the fact on how, like I said, it was kind of a down year in baseball. Where I think softball, it was up.
Well,
softball, I think, was pretty good. Holcomb, Scott City were, number one seeds in the state tournaments with their records this year. Cimarron was absolutely deserving probably to go play in the state tournament if there was a wild card scenario because they were that good. They took Holcomb to extras in the regionals. Colby had a good year. Goodland had a solid year. This was a good year in the league for softball.
Yeah, but up and down years are relative when you're picking within that region. You're picking within the conference for the all-team selections. Why does up or down year within those conferences matter? I don't think it should.
I don't know. I could just see baseball coaches, which are all guys, getting into a room and saying, all right, here's the top 20 players, vote. All right, we're good. We're out of here. And I could see the softball coaches getting in a room and be like, I want this player in. And it depends on how you all look at it. I mean, sometimes you've got coaches that want to get a senior on a team.
Mm-hmm.
They want to get a senior a little bit of love as they go out the door. So they get an honorable mention or something like that. I can't explain the honorable mention for baseball. Can't explain that.
And it does become, I think,
years.
It becomes through that, I think, a little bit political almost, where you're like, I want to get the senior on, even though they might not deserve it as much as somebody else. And regardless, congratulations to everyone. We spent half this time complaining, but yeah, great year from especially our softball players, and congratulations to everyone that made a team.
No, it was great. And so, yeah, I actually don't think I have any complaints. It's just an interesting thing to discuss from time to time and to bring it up locally with all league stuff, which I have no complaints about it. I think players that deserved honors, whether it was first team, second team, or honorable mention, got those honors and moved forward. All right. That's going to do it for the first thing. We got to get to break. Joe Tillery is going to join us next. We're talking K-State baseball and more with Joe, so stick around. You're listening to the Morning Blitz.
At Tropical Smoothie Cafe, summer is our season, and we're kicking it off with a free 12-ounce Island Punch smoothie for National Flip Flop Day. Grab your flip-flops and head to your local cafe on May 29th from 2 to 7 p.m. Terms and conditions apply.
Lainey Wilson, now streaming on Hulu. The story you haven't heard.
I experienced a lot of heartache. I'm a tough woman, but it's not easy.
Lainey Wilson.
It's taken me a really long time to even get to this moment.
And the CMA Award for Entertainer of the Year goes to Lainey Wilson.
Hey y'all, it's Lainey. I cannot wait for you to see my special streaming on Hulu. This has been a wild ride, and you'll get to ride alongside me on this journey.
Lainey Wilson, Bell Bottom Country, now streaming only on Hulu.
Brought to you by Navage. Don't let a cold, sinus infection, or allergies ruin your day. Breathe easier, sleep better, and feel healthier with Navage. Visit Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, or a store near you.
It's time for a check of the markets with the Anderson Trade Group on the Kansas Farm and Ranch Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Kate Thompson with the Anderson Trade Group. Today is Wednesday, May 29th. And on the overnights last night, July corn traded lower 2.5 at 460. September down 2 at 469.5. December down 2 1/4 at 483. And March corn down 2.5 at 495 1/4. July soybeans traded lower 7 on the overnights at 12.22 1/4. August down 7.5 at 12.21 1/2. September down 7 3/4 at 12.04 3/4. And November beans down 8 at 12.02 1/2. Chicago wheat like contract lower 5 3/4 at 6.94 1/2. September down 5 3/4 at 7.14 3/4. December down 4 3/4 at 7.37 1/2. And March soft wheat down 5 1/4 at 7.51 3/4. Kansas City wheat, July contract lower 10 on the overnights at 7.20 3/4. September down 10.5 at 7.34.5. December down 10.25 at 7.50 3/4. And March hard wheat down 10 at 7.62 3/4. On the stock market this morning, the Dow down $259 at 38,685. The S&P down 38 at 5,286. The Nasdaq down 156 at 18,784. Gold lower $18.40 an ounce at 2,337, and crude oil up 36 cents a barrel at 80.19. If you have any questions about marketing grain or would like to talk about risk management options, here in our Kansas City office, myself, Tom Fluto, Jared Law, or Tyler Ghosh at 913-748-3000.
The Anderson Trade Group, proud market partners with Kansas Farm and Ranch Radio. Find out more at andersongrain.com. The risk of loss through trading futures and or options is substantial, and each investor and or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance, whether actual or indicated, is not indicative of future results. The Anderson Trade Group has no guarantee that the advice given will result in profitable trades.
There are a lot of inconsistencies when growing soybeans. The soil, the weather, the market. You need something you can count on, like Revitech fungicide from BASF. It consistently out-yields other fungicides by up to 9.5 bushels per acre, consistently wins in on-farm head-to-head comparisons, and consistently makes for happy farmers. Revitech fungicide. Visit revxfields.com for full results. Always read and follow label directions. Yield data based on summary of 2019 through 2022 Revex field scale demonstration trials.
At Case IH, we know you work hard all year to maximize your yield at harvest. And to do that, you need a combine that works as hard as you do. That's why we built the new AF11 with more horsepower, more efficiency, and more capacity than any other combine out there. Plus, built-in automation to harvest more easily than ever before. To do more with every engine hour, you need equipment that's as good as you are. You need the best in your field. Visit your local Case IH dealer for more on the AF11.
Welcome to the Maverick Half Minute. Did you know Northwest Tech feels it's important to always learn something new? We have created the Community Academy just for you. Classes like CDL, EMT, CNA, CMA, Rules and Officiating, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and more. Visit nwktc.edu and click the Community tab. Check frequently as new classes are always being added. Sign up today by calling 785-890-3641.
May is Beef Month. It's good to be reminded how many dollars are circulated by the local cattlemen who support our local businesses and main streets. Think how many people are supported by the beef industry. Beef Month is proudly supported by Hoxie Feed Yard, Pioneer Feed Yard of Oakley, Farmer State Bank of Oakley, Triple R Insurance, Hinkle Termite and Pest Control, Black Hide Beef, Western State Bank, Lane County Feeders, Decatur County Beef, Oakley Health Mart Pharmacy, Outdoor Bank, Great Western Tire, and Oakley Farm and Home.
Hey, it's Brian Haney, the voice of the Jayhawks. A two-hand follow jam is true for Josh Jackson. And you're listening to the Morning Blitz with my main man, Ross Volkmer, right here on 102.5 You Rock.
Having a little bit of issues. Let's see here. I've got Joe Tiller. I think he's on the phone. Let's see if he's there. Joe, you there this morning? I don't know if I've got Joe or not. I feel like as if Joe
Sounds
said,
like a no.
Joe says that he can hear me, but for whatever reason, I can't hear him, which is extremely weird. Joe, are you there? We're trying to get you on the phone here. It's like as if almost I've muted Joe, but I wasn't trying to mute Joe. So I don't know what I've done wrong, to be completely honest with you in this scenario. I really, really don't. So I've tried getting Joe on the phone, but we're having some issues with him at this point in time. We'll see if maybe Joe we'll see if I'll see if I can get Joe to call back in. We'll see if we can get him on the line here and see if we can get him on the show here. But anyway, give us your thoughts quickly on the Western Conference Finals. Quickly, sorry, just give us your thoughts on the Western Conference Finals while I'm doing this.
Essentially, last night, if you missed it, 3-0 up are the Dallas Mavericks in that Western Conference series. And you almost expected with their backs against the wall, the Timberwolves to come out and fight the way that they did, but that doesn't make it any less of, say, a heroic effort last night, because they finally got something that they've been searching really all series for, and that has been good shooting performances from quotes right now, the other guys, because Ant Edwards has gotten the headlines and he's gotten the cool highlights and all of this great stuff. But this team, anyone that watched that Denver series, sorry Nuggets fans, knows that it's because all of these other guys were contributing. You were getting big Jaden McDaniels buckets on both ends. Great play on both ends. Karl Anthony Towns was great. Mike Conley was great. And that's sort of what they got back to last night. Credit to the Dallas defense to keeping those guys for keeping those guys sort of out of it up until now. But you finally got Karl Anthony Towns going 4 of 5 from 3. The first 3 games he had made 4 total triples, made 4 last night. That was huge. Mike Conley almost flies under the radar the way he plays. 14 points, 7 assists, 3 boards, 4 steals for Mike. Very old, but just continues to contribute. It's almost you expect him to fall off a cliff at some point, so to speak, with his players' contributions, and he continues to be good for them. Naz Reid was really the only question mark. He wasn't great for them scoring off the bench, and I thought he sort of needed to be with both Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns in foul trouble at points throughout this game. The Timberwolves would have liked some more scoring from Naz Reid. But at the end of the day, this was this game last night, Game 4, a win for the Timberwolves, 105-100, was what the rest of the 3 games were, which was performances in clutch time. Games 1, 2, and 3, it was tied, or Dallas was even losing, trailing in the last 3-4 minutes of games, and they just had the closers. Kyrie and Luka, 2 of the best closers in the game on the same team, basically going my turn, your turn with isolations in giving the T-Wolves buckets. Last night it was different. They played great defense down the stretch, did the Timberwolves, and they got good shots in big made shots in the last few minutes of games. It seems very simple, but it's something they were lacking in this series, and I think that was a big contributor to their win last night.
I think we have Joe on the line. Let's see. Joe, can you hear us now?
I can. Can you hear me?
Hey, Joe, thank you so much for dealing with our technical difficulties this morning, buddy. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Hey, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
Joe Tillery once again on to talk a little bit of K-State athletics, in particular K-State baseball. Joe, I just want to start first and foremost. I mean, how exciting is it to see K-State back in the field of 64 for the baseball tournament for the first time since 2013?
Man, it is really exciting. I mean, I think even more so this year, obviously based off of last year where they got incredibly close to the tournament and the conversation of whose resume stacks up kind of came down to a couple of different teams. And obviously not everybody's going to make the tournament every season, but there's just definitely a different level of excitement, of optimism surrounding Manhattan, specifically on the baseball diamond. And it feels like, even though, you know, they might not be playing the best baseball in the country right now, but the guys have the ability and the playmakers to get hot. And it's just exciting to see, man. I'm really pumped to see it. I'm glad they're in a regional where it's semi-local. I mean, the drive isn't too far over to Fayetteville, but I'm excited to see what happens, and I can't wait for this weekend.
And we have other guests on that talk little college baseball, and they were saying that if K-State didn't make the tournament this year, that skipper Coach Hughes was going to lose his mind more than likely, because he went out and scheduled hard this year and tried to make sure that his team had the resume to make the postseason. And I'm sure it's got to be a real relief knowing that what they did through the regular season, whether it's scheduling and the wins that they got, was enough to get them in the big tournament.
Yeah, you know, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. I'll tell you that. I think watching down the stretch, I had this growing feeling of, and usually I'm pretty optimistic, of just like nervous. Like the last couple of weeks, you know, I'm biting my tongue. I'm waiting to see what happens. But yeah, losing his mind would have been a good way to describe what would have happened. But I think commending Pete Hughes for some of the comments he made during the season were good, because there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of push back on some of these committees and some of these kind of higher powers in deciding who makes the tournament. And a couple weeks before, I think it was about a week before Arlington, Hughes talked about it, and he was asked a question from the local reporter asking about, hey, you know, how do you think your team stands heading into the tournament, or do you think you've done enough? And without missing a beat, he says, if my jersey says Oklahoma or Texas Tech, we wouldn't even be having this question right now. We wouldn't have to answer this question. So there's a lot of things like that where it's just like, how do you go about pushing back on these guys that decide who makes the tournament? But thankfully for K-State, we don't have to worry about a reality where they're snubbed twice in a row. I can imagine that would have been, the sky is falling moment, the Chicken Little moment for everybody.
Joe Tiller is our guest. We're talking K-State baseball. Your thoughts on the regional? I mean, no one wants to go really play in Fayetteville. It's one of the tougher places to play. But your thoughts overall on the draw that the Wildcats got?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a tough draw. I mean, I'm not gonna discredit anybody in the field. It feels like Fayetteville's obviously. I personally haven't been, but I've heard a lot of great things about the environment. So it's going to be rocking for sure. Which you like that, especially in the Big 12. I mean, you've played some really special road game elements. Stillwater is commended incredibly. Morgantown's tough to play at. But overall, I'm really interested to see how this first Friday matchup goes. Louisiana Tech, I think, if you're not a huge baseball person, it's easy to look at these teams and almost discredit them because it's not, power conferences in some areas. It's not this is LSU, it's, Louisiana Tech. And I think that sometimes people kind of look at that and check the numbers and say, well, K-State should be the better team. I mean, they got a first draw matchup against a team that's won 40-plus games. Their top 4 guys on the roster have more than 15 home runs. They're averaging over 7 runs a game. This is not an easy draw by any means, but I think you like the idea that, okay, K-State has guys like Kalen Culpepper, guys like Brady Day that can get hot, and it's really just about winning that first game. I think if you can get the right guys, on the horse, K-State has that ability to make it out of Fayetteville, but it's going to come down to this first game. Get that first win, get the confidence up, and then see what the boys can do.
You mentioned a couple of players there in Kalen Culpepper and Brady Day. Who are going to be some other guys that you think really need to step up in order for them to have a shot at pulling off an upset and advancing into the Supers?
Well, it's a great question. I think overall, and I think they mentioned it a little bit in the pregame presser the other day, but Chuck Ingram's been one that's kind of had an up and down season. I think he's a Wichita State transfer, if I'm not mistaken. Ingram's been kind of up and down this season. He's had some big moments. He's had some lows. And they kind of had to take a step back for a second the last couple of weeks, see what's going on. And Chuck Ingram should be back out there doing his thing. And I think he's one that I'm going to watch pretty intently, as well as a guy like Daniel Rivera. Most of these guys on the roster, not most, but at Kansas State, they've never been to a regional. So it's not a situation where, okay, this guy has experience, we'll lean on him. This is virtually new waters for everybody. This is a whole new experience. But I would probably circle a guy like Chuck Ingram. I think he could absolutely have a big series. And then there's a couple of guys that have been not necessarily under the radar, but have been hitting the ball well, and Brendan Jones, Nick English. There's a couple of young guys stepping up as well. So I would probably circle those guys if I'm watching that box score.
Joe Tillery, our guest. We're talking Kansas State baseball. Regional play gets going on Friday for the Wildcats. As you heard Joe mention, they take on Louisiana Tech. Pitching depth is so huge in the postseason because if you lose in the first round or losing, you got to work your way back through the losers bracket because it's a double elimination. How do you feel about the depth of K-State pitching going into the weekend?
I feel okay, I would say. I don't feel bad. I think there's been comments made by the staff saying, hey, this is the most confident we've felt in our room, in our bullpen for a while. They're getting guys like Ty Rule back, who's had a couple of appearances after being injured all year. Tyson Neighbors is starting to return to form. I feel okay. I think coming into the season, I definitely felt a lot better about the pitching staff, but then they had some really high moments where they go, combined no-hitter, and they also had some low moments where they give up, 10 in the first 3 innings. It's there's definitely a spot of, okay, these guys have to be locating pitches early because, if not, you're going to be in trouble. Louisiana Tech's got some hitters on their roster, but I think they've got the good starting arms. They'll be okay with that, but it's going to see what happens down the stretch, whether the starter goes, 7, 8 innings and then can hand it off to a Tyson Neighbors, a Ty Rule, see what happens down the stretch. But the pitching is going to be a major, major factor for K-State.
No matter what happens here this upcoming weekend, is this season been a big success, or do they need to win a game in the postseason to feel like it was a really successful season?
Well, that's a good question. I would say, and I'm not speaking for everybody here, I almost feel like you need to win a first game, or at least a game in the postseason here, because it's one thing to get to the dance, but it's also one thing to leave before you hear the first song. I think that Kansas State last year had a better element of heading into the postseason. Had they made that tournament, they were playing better baseball. If you get to the tournament, miss out, whatever the case is, you go 0-2 and you're headed home. I don't know that this feels like quite the success that it's chalked up to be, especially with some of these MLB pipeline guys you have. I mean, Culpepper's in the top 100, Neighbors in the top 100. There's a couple of guys creeping up that list. I think you want to, I mean, obviously you'd love to win the regional, but if you can get one, just show, hey, we deserve to be here more than this case is this. Like, it's going to give that committee a little bit more confidence in Kansas State going forward, in Pete Hughes' teams going forward, so that these situations don't continue to happen as frequently.
Joe Tillery continue to be our guest, talking Kansas State baseball. Regional play once again begins Friday against Louisiana Tech in Fayetteville, Arkansas. The Wildcats once again back in the dance, in the baseball dance, that is, for the first time since 2013. Joe, I want to change up the subject real quickly here because I know you cover all kinds of sports with basketball and football. What are your thoughts kind of post-spring of K-State football going into the summer months?
Man, I got to tell you, I am really excited. I think K-State, identified the spots they had on the roster they needed to hit. They looked at, okay, we need a backup running back, or we need someone behind DJ to take some of that, workload off. And that was a big area of emphasis. I didn't know they'd end up with Dylan Edwards. I mean, that's an incredible ad. That is one of the best, spring portal signings of the offseason for just about every team out there. But I love the addition. I think they added a solid linebacker from UNM. My dad's family is all UNM fans, so I got to see Marenko play a little bit here or there. But I think the main part, and this always comes back to the top with Chris Kleiman, is Kansas State adds a unique level of stability in an unstable era of college athletics. The portal, like you saw one loss of Javon Banks. I can't remember where he ended up off the top of my head. I think maybe, I forget either way. But K-State lost one player to the spring transfer portal window. They avoided a lot of chaos, and they got significantly better with their additions.
Well, one more here, I guess. There's been a lot of hype around Avery Johnson and how good he has looked and how good he was, of course, last year. How do you feel like his sophomore season, or I mean, it's not really his sophomore season, but how do you feel like this sophomore year upcoming him, this second year, how do you think it's going to be? Do you think we're going to see an explosion onto the national scene of Avery Johnson, or do you think we're going to, what do you think we'll see from Avery in this first full season of Avery Johnson, being the helm and being the key piece of K-State football?
I should be cautiously optimistic, but that's not the person I am. Avery is going to be incredible. I mean, the dude is the real deal. He's legit. I mean, I know that it's kind of crazy that there's a real consideration that Avery's a Heisman contender as is, but the kid is top 10 odds in the nation to be a Heisman quarterback. He's got the top odds of any Big 12 player as of the last couple of weeks on different sports books to be the Heisman Trophy winner. I think with Avery, he is such a special kid. Like, the maturity is always talked about with Avery Johnson. That's a kid that had to sit behind Will Howard and see how Will commanded himself, and it kind of is reminiscent, obviously different situation to an extent, but comparable to an Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes situation for Chiefs fans listening. That's definitely something that kind of had that feel to the overall situation. Avery's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country. I mean, athletically, throwing the ball, I think he's going to sling the ball around a ton. And I think bringing a guy like Matt Wells in from, I guess, Texas Tech and Oklahoma, a couple of different spots, the pairing is going to be incredible. And I think Avery's going to have a real shot at being on that Heisman stage this season.
We will have to wait and see. Joe, great stuff. Thank you so much for taking some time, and also, of course, for being forgiving of us and our technical difficulties. We promise we'll get those ironed out the next time you join us, if you will.
Hey, man, anytime. Let me know. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Joe. Once again, that's great stuff there. Joe Tillery, he helps cover just kind of his own little YouTube page for Kansas State. Just some great stuff. Follow him on Twitter. By the way, you want to follow him at Twitter, you can go to @Tillery_Joe is where you want to go. I was thinking about this last night. This is kind of how weird I guess I was, but I was thinking about this last night. And what if his name was Art?
Art Tillery?
Art Tillery.
Go to break.
We will go to break. Up next, the Negro Leagues and Major League Baseball have come together with their statistics. What are our thoughts on that next here on the Morning Blitz?
Your livelihood is important to you. You work hard to succeed in your farming operation, crop, livestock, home, vehicles, and special needs. We have you covered. Discounts are available for new business, remodeling, hail-resistive roofing, multi-policy, and many more. Optional coverage endorsements as well for machinery ingestion and equipment breakdown. Umbrella coverage for additional coverage on your home, farm, and auto. See the girls at the Insurance Agency at 1020 Main in Goodland or call 785-899-5011.
If you're shopping for a banking institution, visit with Equity Bank of Hoxie, Grinnell, and Quinter, Kansas. The Equity Bank is heavily invested in local business and activities contributing in many ways back to their community. Their employees are involved with many organizations and area events. Plus, a lot of experience comes with that staff. You'll find valuable local assistance when you bank at the Equity Bank of Hoxie, Grinnell, Quinter, and other locations in Western Kansas. The Equity Bank, member FDIC.
The Farmers State Bank of Oakley has been financing agriculture since the day we opened our doors. Hello, this is Corbin, and we are proud to be your locally owned partner in ag. We invite you to come and visit with us when you need to purchase new or used farm equipment, or need any type of agriculture or business loan. We have the knowledge, experience, and financial resources to keep you growing. The Farmers State Bank of Oakley, a tradition of community and agriculture for over 115 years. Member FDIC.
You're tuned in to the Morning Blitz.
All they do is sit around and talk.
On 102.5 U Rock and the Rocking M app.
Thanks again to Joe. It's been kind of one of those days. It feels like it's kind of a Monday, technologically wise. We had issues with the phone. Christian had some issues with his stuff over there. So in order for this ship to fly, a lot has to go right. And most mornings we do get it going in the right direction. But
I'm still getting over that pun, so you gotta.
The artillery?
Yeah, you gotta give me.
I was just thinking about it because, like, at R-A-R-T, and then you could just go Hillary right after that. At artillery.
Well, I'm a history major, so I was watching some World War I documentaries yesterday. So I got enough artillery in my life. I don't need any more. I don't need any more Ross puns at all, but especially artillery one.
I don't think I have that many puns, but I thought that one was definitely punny. Anyway, let's move on to the news yesterday. Late last night, the news came out that the Major League Baseball is going to incorporate Negro League statistics into the record books. And so that has completely changed the history of baseball, of professional baseball's, records right now, if you look at it, because now there's a new career leader in batting average. That's Josh Gibson, who batted .372, surpassing Ty Cobb, who batted .367. There were over 2,300 players incorporated Tuesday after 3 years of research to put this whole thing together, which, first of all, is highly impressive. I can't imagine trying to dig up old stats. That had to be extremely hard.
Yeah, essentially from what I've seen, The Athletic has done some great reporting on it. The Negro Leagues did not do a very good job, and obviously they didn't have a ton of resources at just keeping stats. So they had to go through and find old, as you can, I'm sure, guess, terrible quality game film and comb through local newspapers and sort of piece and parcel together box scores to get all this information. So I'm sure it was going on in the background at the MLB and a very difficult endeavor. I'm sort of wondering if there's still an asterisk, so to speak, because it's a different league and they played a different number of games and they had a different number of teams. That there was a quote from, I think it was Josh Gibson's son or grandson, saying something along the lines of, well, people used to say he's the best hitter in the Negro Leagues. Now they can say he's the best hitter of all time. My gut reaction is, aren't people still going to say he's the best hitter of all time? Yeah, he played in the Negro Leagues. Like there's still a sort of separation because they played in different leagues. Is that crazy?
I don't know. I think you've kind of opened a can of worms. We don't have a lot of time to dive into this. And I'm not talking about you opening a can of worms. I think baseball has opened up a massive can of worms on this because, like I said, I don't know. And I don't know. There's a lot of things have changed. It's kind of almost like taking two separate leagues and combining them to say this is one statistic. So I that's
exactly what I'm saying.
That's what's kind of odd about it. It'd be like taking the NFL and combining the UFL statistics after 20 years and saying, well, these are the two pro leagues and the Americans. Here's the overall stats. Okay. Did so-and-so league have as good a competition? Maybe it did. I don't know. I'm not trying to say that the Negro leagues were less talented. I'm definitely not trying to say that, but I don't know. It feels kind of like that though, which I find to be interesting. All right. We've got to get to the walk-off. We are once again way past schedule.
A 3-run walk-off home run. A game-winning walk-off with a walk-off. His second walk-off hit of the season. In walk-off fashion. That baby's go.
Coors Field special last night there in Denver. 13-7, the Guardians beat the Rockies. Josh Naylor, shout-out fantasy team, 2 homers driving in 5 runs for Josh Naylor. One of them he absolutely just murdered out over to right field. It was killed. And then, of course, the Rockies had some runs, too. I mean, they scored 7 runs. Most time you score 7 runs, you're going to win. Chris Bryant and Eleury Montero each had a 2-run homer in the game. But, yeah, that was a Coors Field special, as I like to call it. Lots of runs. Lots of runs in high altitude.
When your starter goes 4 1/3 innings, you're not going to win a lot of games.
No, probably not. As for the Royals, they tied a season low with 5 hits, and they lost their 3rd straight, 4-2 to the Twins last night. I'm sure the Royals are just kind of deflated. Went on an 8-game losing streak, didn't gain a game on the Guardians. That 8-game winning streak. Sorry, went on an 8-game winning streak and didn't gain a single game on the Guardians, and now you've lost 3 in a row. Do you know what their record is in Target Field over the last 16 games?
Only because I'm staring at it right now.
1-15. 1 win in their last 16 games at Target Field. It is a house of horrors for the Royals baseball team. Both teams are back in action tonight at 6:40 Central or 6:40 Mountain Time. And, of course, the Royals play on AM 790 KXXX. Christian, any big plans tonight?
None at all. I do have a little bit of quick news. Bronny James foregoing his.
Oh, that's right. They're going to the draft. I've got thoughts on that for tomorrow. All right, let's get out of here. We'll see you tomorrow on the Blitz.